So my enclosure, this is the first one that I used netting for. So all the other ones, yeah, chicken wire, steel mesh, dog crates. And this is the first time I really got my head around netting, and as soon as I started using it, I loved it. So this is the larger weave, so it's got larger squares, which they actually don't use anymore because birds can still get in. So now they use a smaller netting to try and stop that. But it's just so versatile that you can do exactly what I've done here. You can stretch it, you can enclose an entire backyard if you need to. It covers a huge span, it's really lightweight. And one of the great benefits of it is that it will retain 93% of its strength after 10 years of Australian exposure. So it's nylon, so it won't get mouldy, it's incredibly strong. UV treated, pre-stretched. Yeah, it's just, here we go, this is what we use now. So certainly the gold standard when it comes to cat enclosures now. So as I mentioned, my enclosure here was very much DIY. So all of this was created with a saw and a drill, digging holes, put the posts in, hammer, nails, all the usual stuff that a lot of you I'm sure would be able to do. So you don't need to be able to weld. As long as you've got a drill, maybe an angle grinder, this is all very achievable. So that tunnel up there is just some wire netting with some pine timber there. Again, anyone can do that, but to do it right, I would probably do it in some, maybe some burgoo or some sort of outdoor timber that won't twist and buckle. So this is more like what we do now. So this is the typical cat enclosure down the side of a house, using a space that it's useless for anything else. It's out the side where the laundry is, and it's really just a walkway. So this is the perfect place for a cat enclosure. We just use the netting straight from, you can either go into the eaves if it's strong enough, which a lot of modern houses this will be strong enough. The netting isn't very heavy, so it can support enough weight. Or you can go into the bricks if you feel like it's not strong enough, and then straight down to the fence. Ideally, if you have colorbond fence, you can do what I've done here and just screw straight into it. So what you want is some stainless steel wire. So you can buy that from Bunnings or eBay. So some turnbuckles, just so that when you put the wire on, you can tighten it. So one on that end. A couple of little, these are called eyelets or eye shackles or D shackles. So one on each end. The wire goes along. And then you can use these little rope grips. So they will just attach onto the wire, one at each end. So all of that is from Bunnings. It's a lot cheaper if you get it on eBay, but yeah, if you want to pay Bunnings prices, then yeah, it's definitely very doable. Some little metal screws just to attach it all. And then what you'll have, and also, sorry, some brackets. So again, these little brackets are from Bunnings. You can get stainless steel ones or slightly nicer ones like I've got up here, which are a bit rounded. But these are the cheapest option. So you put those around about every 30 centimetres. And what you'll end up with is this. So you've got your eye strap, your turnbuckle, the wire goes through the brackets all the way along, and then when you tension it, cats definitely can't get through there. So then to attach the netting, you just have these. These are little C-clips used for fencing, and you just go, close them. Very simple. So everywhere that you think a cat could get through, the more the better. Just attach them in there. that's ideal. That's the best way at the moment to do an enclosure. So netting, stainless steel wire, and just run wires everywhere. So for instance, if you were to enclose this outdoor space here, you would run wires all the way along on the outside of these posts, up into the timber up here, all the way along there, up and down, and all the way around, down the brick wall, along the deck, and all the way around. So all the perimeter, all you have to do is just continuously run wires. So you can run the wires, they can go around about 10 metres before I would suggest putting another turnbuckle in to tension it. So you might have one up on the top corner, one on the bottom corner, and they'll at least do that whole side there. So this one was a whole yard one. So again, you can sort of see there is a wire that runs along here, and we've also put a wire that goes along here just to hold the netting back a little bit there. A wire along the fence, and a wire along up here underneath the gutter into the bricks. So that's not a huge yard, so it's quite an easy one to net the whole thing. So this one is a huge yard. So that one, you can see that we've had to put a bit of a circus pole in. So again, it may look a little bit complicated, but if you can dig a hole in the ground and put a bag of concrete in, then there's nothing stopping anyone from being able to do this. The wires, as I've shown you, are quite simple, and all you have to do with those is run them all the way around the perimeters. Dig a hole, concrete, post in. The hard part is putting the netting over everything. It takes a couple of people pulling and twisting and trying to get it in all the right places, but this was a huge yard and we were able to enclose the whole thing. So yeah, that just shows really how incredible it is. Like I was talking to you just earlier about what people used to do with all the steel mesh and things like that, and just more of a cat cage rather than an enclosure. Yeah, so now that people are using this as the gold standard for enclosures, it's just so much better. It opens up so many possibilities for people. Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
Learning curve.
Yeah. So the netting also comes in stone colour, by the way. So we'd use stone in here if we were to do this deck, because it would really almost match our posts. So a lot of people prefer that colour. So you can use pretty much any space you've got, you can turn it into an enclosure. So this one here, just a little L shape in someone's yard, a little garden bed, and obviously I've used some steel and welded it, but you can also use timber. So you can use, like I have here, some outdoor timbers. They're weathered after being out there for a few years, but I did this on a budget, so you could always get some much nicer timbers that you actually paint and make sure they're sealed properly. But yeah, this one I probably need to replace mine. So this one, yeah, steel, and again, just the wires running around everything. Wires along the bottom, up here. A little bit of mesh up here as well. But it's turned what is just a garden bed, so just an unused part of your house again, into a little enclosure. There's also the option of putting something out into the yard. So this one, again, just another post into the ground, very achievable. A steel post that is attached to the fence over there. So again, if you can weld, then that's great, but otherwise drill through into the steel and it's there. And then just wires and netting everywhere else. So we've used steel across the top just to give it a nice shape, but you could just run wires straight across. You don't actually need steel everywhere. It can be a bit more like, I believe you had a picture here of, so a bit more like this one here, where they've just used some steel posts and some wires around. That one there. So we just tried to avoid that curve in the wire at the top by using a bit more steel there. what I'd also like to say about this one is that when we initially went to quote, she wanted the enclosure just to go to the edge of the concrete. And I asked if it was alright if we put it just that little bit further out, because the cats really love grass. So it would make all the difference for this cat to, instead of just being completely on concrete, to just have that little bit of grass. So where possible, do include a bit of grass. And if you can't include grass, then you can always get a children's sand pit, put some soil in there, plant some grass in it, or just put some turf roll in, and give them their own little space of grass. If you could get something bigger, a couple of rolls of turf in somewhere, or yeah, like a clamshell type thing, they're only $10 from Bunnings, and chuck some soil in, grass, very easy. And the bonus is that they might even use it as their outdoor toilet, so you can get the litter trays out of the house.
You get I get the turf rolls at Bunnings.
Yeah.
Just one of them rolled out like a carpet, and
Yep.
when they've peed on it and done everything on it, just put another one
that's
down.
right, yeah, get rid of it. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's well worth it, they just love grass so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, where possible, try and include that, I'd say. Yeah. So also, yeah, with this enclosure, so the idea that we had with that bottom bit down there, which is complete overkill, obviously, we could have just left this enclosure down that side. We didn't need to do the tunnel, but we really thought that A, she'd like to be able to see this part of the yard. She'd like to be up in the trees with the little boxes that I've put on the fences there, feeling like she's up there, up high. But the idea was that we were hoping she'd use that bit down there as her toilet. I hated litter in the house, just that running with it in their paws, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. So yeah, we put that little bit down there hoping that she'd use that. And cats are funny. They, of all the places that, when we had two in there, they would not go down there, they wouldn't go in the bark chips, they'd go in the river rocks. Not every yard is suitable for netting, so this one you could technically trim the trees, but really you don't want to. So you might have, say, that side of the house or that side of the house where you could net. But this one, this yard, some of it is also suitable for a fence top system. So this one here, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of it, it's the Ocelot Roller. So the idea is that the cat tries to jump up, its paws like that, and it can't get over. It has its ups and its downs. We rarely find a yard that's suitable for it. So the downside is that if you imagine here, that fence up there, yeah, we could put it along there. The one down there, we could put it along there. But as soon as you get things like the trees near the fences, you just can't use it. The cats will climb up the trees and they'll go over. So it really relies on just the right type of yard. As soon as you have anything near the fence, they're just going to work out a way of going over. So it's, in theory, it is a great system, but you really just have to have the right type of yard. And I'm sure that with a lot of you being nature lovers, you would have yards with a lot of trees and plants and things in them. So yeah, it's not really ideal for a lot of situations.
Strikes me as something that might be useful to keep other people's cats out of your yard.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no, yeah. So there's sort of the flip side to it. So yes, it's great for keeping them out, but if one climbs up a tree or onto something over the other side and gets into your yard, then they're also trapped in. So yeah, that's the downside, is that you don't want someone else's cat trapped in your yard in a high stress situation, and that turns to fighting and things like that. Yeah, so
I suppose in newer estates where you're dealing with very bare spaces anyway, having something like that initially, and then you could plan your garden around to allow for systems like that. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
In an
so
ideal situation.
That's right, yeah. All those newer estates have the colour wand fences, and yeah, you're right, they've got very young gardens. So yeah, there is a time and a place for it, for sure, but for a lot of people it just doesn't quite suit. But the other entertaining thing about it is when birds try and land on it.
And does your fence have to be a certain height for that? I think I read it had to be...
Yeah, they do recommend that it's a 1.8 fence. So if you can imagine, if it's a 1.5 fence, then the cat's just going to jump over. You'd be surprised when they really want to jump. You'd be surprised how high they can. I think a lot of the time they pitifully try and jump on things and think, oh, look at how weak I am, and then when they want to escape, they just bound over something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. So the idea is that you do run all the way along the perimeters. Corners can be another weak spot. As you can see, they have these little knobs, but you can get around that with a little bit of netting in the corner. So you go from the corner to the corner with a bit of netting so they can't actually jump up. So there's little ways around issues, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily advocate it for many yards.
I've heard it's also really expensive, is that right?
It is quite expensive, yeah. I'm not sure per metre what it is, but the website has all the prices on it. It was far more expensive for that particular job than if we'd done netting. But she lived in a retirement village and they didn't want netting, so they just wanted something unobtrusive. And the colour was to match her colour-bond fence as well, so you can get it in any colour that matches. So fence brackets, I would say would be slightly more reliable, just because you can use them to go in front of existing trees and things like that. So the idea is just basically a security system, security fence for cats. So they go up, they can't jump up over it, it just leans out. So it has all the same upsides and downsides that the rollers have, where again it doesn't stop other cats getting in. You can't have anything too close. So even this structure here, she had to make sure nothing was ever close to the structure so that it can't go up onto there and then over the fence. So it's always just a matter of thinking about how the cat can get out. So yeah, I'd say for peace of mind, I wouldn't really go near it. You'd always be looking out thinking, oh, have they escaped? You just want that peace of mind knowing that they're stuck in there, they can't get out. Electric fences. So electric fences, I haven't actually had any experience with. You mentioned that there was someone here that did do one and that it was quite inexpensive.
$600. So
Yeah.
someone who fosters cats for Dun Roman, and she's had cats for many, many years, and for her yard, she said it's the best thing because she's got multiple cats. It's fairly invisible, and the comment you made about anxiety about other cats, it does actually, on the website for these electric fence lines, they say that cats don't usually jump over an obstacle, they jump on it and then over. And so what you're saying about the ocelot, they could still jump over it. According to this website, they don't tend to do that. But she found that the anxiety that her cats had previously had about other cats wanting to come in had completely dissipated, and she'd had them on lots of naturopathy medications and hardcore medications, and she could stop all of that because other cats weren't coming in. So for her and her fence line, she just thought it was the bee's knees.
Yeah, yeah.
Do fences have to be a certain height for that one, do you know?
They do. Yeah.
I would say it would be the same case, yeah. Like I've never used those, but I would say that, yeah, again, you'd want them to be high enough that a cat can't just jump all the way over. But yeah, that's right, that they don't like to jump straight over things, they like to know what they're landing on.
Yeah.
But I think if they were bold enough, if they were really desperate enough, then they might try it, they might just try and bound straight over. Yeah. So, I've never used the electric fences, but of the three fence systems, I would say that would be the one that I would say would have the most success, because as soon as they touch it, they're not going to want to touch it again. Whereas with the Ocelot system, they're going to keep trying. Yeah, they're not going to take no for an answer. I think having that little mild electric shock is going to be enough to make them stop trying. But this one, they're just going to keep prodding and trying different corners and things like that until they work out how to. And there have been stories of cats that have worked out how to manage it. So usually the black bits. So you put another one of these in here. So there is still that small amount of space. And cats, of course, being cats, have worked out that they can get up there and they put their paws in a certain spot and they can actually get over still. So yeah, I would, if anything, if you're looking at a fence system, I would recommend the electric one. So another simple option, and this, I noticed you asked about the height of fences.
Yeah.
So I assume you've got small ones.
1.4 metres, I think.
All right.
it is,
Are they
yeah.
steel or timber?
Steel.
Steel.
Colour-bond fence. Colour-bond fence.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So another option is to literally just extend your fences. So colour bond extensions. You can do them yourself, or you can get a fencing company to come and do it. And if you make them high enough, like this fence here, for instance, yes, it's on a retaining wall, but there's nothing stopping us from doing that fence down the back or that fence down there and raising them up so the cats just can't jump high enough.
Do you have to get council permission for that?
So everything with your fences, you obviously need to get your neighbours' permission because you share the fences. In terms of council permission, I'm not sure when it comes to raising a fence, but I'd say it would be best to check. Yeah, it would always be best to check. So with everything that you do with your fences, I would always recommend asking your neighbours. So I've done that with you, Vanessa, there. Just so when I came and quoted Vanessa's fence that she shares, I recommended that you went and spoke to them, and you did, and they were fine with it. So, and I think that's mostly the case, that people, as long as you say that you're doing it to keep your cats in, they're gonna want you to do it, because they don't want your cats in their yard either. So with the wire systems, we always do it on our side of the fence instead of on top, just so that there's no visibility for the neighbours. The rollers, they have to go on top. You can put them on here if you want, I guess, but it does allow that jumping over onto the top of the fence to happen, so they work best if they're on top. But yeah, sometimes it is just as simple as, just putting some fence extensions on. And then you can always do brackets and rollers on top as well, just for extra security.
So with the brackets,
Yep.
You said you wouldn't go near them. Is that just because of the peace of mind? Like you can't
It is.
absolutely
Yeah, exactly.
be sure
So
that they won't.
yeah, so we like to have an enclosure because we know that Lexi can't get out of it, so we don't have to worry about where she is. I feel like if we had our yard with brackets or rollers, we'd always just be outside just thinking, has she escaped today? Because there is that small chance of failure, so we just want that peace of mind knowing that she's in. So gates and zips. Hello, mate. So yeah, our professional standard is that we do weld. So we weld up the steel frames for the gates, and we weld up the gates. So obviously a lot of people won't be able to do that. You can always pay someone to come and do it, so you guys can do your actual netting, and you can say, hey Ryan, I'd like you to come and weld up the steel gate and frame for me. I'm more than happy to do that. Because the rest of it, as you've seen, is very achievable for anyone. With the wire system, all you need is a drill, so that's all very easy. And the clippers, by the way, they're just from Bunnings too. So the other option is a zip. So the zips, you can literally just stitch them into the netting. When you buy these from, there's a website called Cat Nets, which I'm sure a lot of you would have seen. You can buy these zips exactly like that, in the L shape, and you can buy them so they're already pre-stitched into a whole piece of netting. So all you have to do is make your enclosure, run your wires everywhere, and then you just clip on your panel of netting with the zip already in it, and you've got your entrance. So when it comes to down the bottom, on this one they've just gone to the deck. So these aren't my enclosures, by the way, these are just from Cat Nets. So yeah, down on the deck they put wire. But if you're going into the ground, it can be as simple as some long tent pegs into the ground, or you could put some pavers along there. What we've done with this one over here is just tent pegs in the garden bed there, and we've never had any issues with it. So it's got some really long pegs or garden stakes down into the ground, and yeah, that's never come up. So it can be quite simple to just peg it down into the ground, and there you go. So cat flaps and tunnels. And just on the zips as well, zips can be a bit of a pain. So if you did go for the enclosure down the side of the house where you've got the laundry and you're coming out with your basket of laundry and you've got to go through the enclosure and you've got to get down and do the zip, and you know what zips are like now. Like, I wouldn't recommend them for an everyday use. If you want one that, say, you're just going to go through every couple of days, maybe to clean out the poo or something like that, then yeah, I would go for a zip, because that's, I mean, I think these are about $15 on cat nets, as opposed to doing a steel gate, which is about $300. So yeah, far cheaper, but not for everyday use. So cat flaps and tunnels. We have a cat flap like this in ours, in a piece of perspex. So if you were to ask a glazier to put a cat flap into one of your windows, it's a few $100s. They take the glass out, they replace it with toughened glass, and then they put in the cat flap. And yeah, it's quite expensive. So this is our alternative. And basically what we do is we just get a piece of perspex, we use the jigsaw to cut out the circle, we put the cat flap in, and then this goes, so this is not the right size to fit this one, but the idea is that it goes in the window, and on your way out through my enclosure you'll be able to see my one in my window. But the idea is that you take the fly screen off, oh hello, you pop that in, you close it, and with your piece of dowel in the end. So it looks just like it's in a piece of glass, but it's in perspex. So obviously you don't need any specialist tools other than a jigsaw and a drill. Yeah.
Yes, and make sure that the child can't crawl through the cat flap at any point.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Are you? Yeah, so that is a really simple alternative. Hello.
And the cat's looking with interest too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it'll take more than 3.2 seconds, does it?
Hello.
I want to say hi to everybody.
Okay. Bye bye. Yeah, so really, really great alternative. Very easy to do yourself. And I would also just recommend, if you do that, you'll be able to see on ours down there that we've put around the edge, we've put some sealing tape just to stop any moisture coming through, any rain. That can be done in pretty much any window. So that's what we did there. That window there is perspex, the cat flap in it, and then just made a little tunnel to go down to the enclosure. There's my one, so as you can see there is a bit of black sealing tape just all the way around it, just to make it nice and weather tight. So depending on where you put your enclosure, you might need a tunnel. With ours, obviously we have the perfect spot, but you might have one, you might have somewhere down in the back garden where you need a tunnel, maybe like we've got here. It doesn't have to be along the top of the fence, it can just be along the ground. But what we've found to be the simplest way is basically what we've done here, which is just to get some Avery wire and just curl it over and screw it into some timber. This timber is certainly not outdoor timber, so I'll get some hardwood like Merbu, or you could even get marine ply or Eco Deck, the plastic. That'd be great as well. So that was very simple. Fold it over, screw it in, and you can make a tunnel. When it comes to coming into the cat flap, you will need a little box like that. So we've basically just made it from steel mesh and a piece of marine ply, a couple of brackets underneath, and again it's all just screwed together, and that's basically just pressing up against the perspex so that there's no escaping. Another option for the cat flap is in a sliding door. So this you can get from Bunnings, and it's just an insert. So it attaches to your existing sliding door, and when you open the sliding door, it moves with it. And when you close it, it's closed on it. So that's a good option if you have that. So freestanding enclosures. So this one is ours. It is a modular system, so every panel is exactly the same, so it can be used to make any shape. We've made it so that it's using the netting, so steel around the outside and netting in the middle, to reduce the cost and the weight, and also because it's much nicer to look through the netting than it is to look through steel mesh. It makes it more of an enclosure rather than a cage. So every single panel is exactly the same, so you could make it a like this one, a 3 by 2 metre, or you can make it an L shape. You can use the side panel for a wall panel. You can make any shape you want depending on how many panels you get. This is our old style where we used 2 metres by 1 metre panels. Now we make squares, so 2 metres by 2 metres, and one of them just has a gate in it as well. So this is the cat nets one. It's very lightweight and portable, so it's a great option if anyone just wants an enclosure that they can take their cat out from the house, put it into the enclosure. It's pretty inexpensive as well. I think this one might be around about $600.
Really, for the whole thing?
Yep, for the whole thing, yep. And they have one that is half the size, and I think one that's even bigger than this one. So it's quite a good option. It all dismantles, comes apart. So yeah, I'd say if anyone is looking at just a freestanding one, that is a good option. Otherwise, our option, which is obviously a bit more robust with the steel and all welded together. The downside obviously is that you have to take your cat out of the house and put it in there yourself. So because it's not attached to the house, you've got to do that carting them. And they get wise to it, and they decide, okay, this is my chance for escape. I'm going to claw out of your arms. And yeah. What I want to try and stress a little bit is that no matter how big you make your enclosure, a cat will always want more. So even with this one, Lexi still tries to escape through the door when we go in and out, because she knows that there's something out there that she wants. And even if we enclosed our whole yard, she'd still want more. That's just, it's in their nature. So rather than think about how big you can make an enclosure, I'd say more think about how entertaining you can make it. So ramps, shelves, as you can see in mine, there's a few shelves up high, and like we've put one, you've got to think about where they want to look. So we've put one at the very front that sits above the gate that you would have walked under, so that she can look at everything that's happening out the front. Likewise in the back, we've got a shelf that looks down over the back fence, and she loves going and talking to the cat over the back as well. So everywhere you can think of that they want to be is where you should try and make it entertaining for them. So this cat box up on the fence up here, she loves to just sit up there and look at all the birds fly around. Same with that one over there, she likes to be able to hide in amongst the leaves and
pretend she's going to catch something.
Yeah, exactly. Like even though they can't catch something, they still just respond really well to that feeling like they can hunt, and that's what they need. So in terms of there's no point making a huge enclosure if it's just going to be bare. You have to make it entertaining and interesting for them. Try and stimulate them a little bit. Fill it with plants, things that they can dig, hide behind. It's all just that feeling like they can hunt still. That's really all that they're after. So this was very simple to make. The hardest part is to find some timber. So if you've got a chainsaw and you're driving around and you just see a fallen branch on the side of the road, then you could quickly just jump out and whiz a couple of branches off and chuck it in the back.
Although that's actually not allowed.
I know. No, that's why you'd have to be quick.
Or fire, you could ring arborists.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there are a few
That's
places.
a boring way to do it.
You can try and in Sweet Talk, some arborists. You can also put a little ad on Facebook saying, if anyone has some branches that are cut down in their yard, I'll come and take them instead of you taking them to the tip. Try and keep your eyes open for little interesting things like that. And we've put a few branches just in the enclosure as well, so there's a few down there, and there's some in the back down that bit. And she likes to scratch on them, and she just likes to be able to hide under them, and they just love all that natural stuff. The more that you can bring that in, the better. So this was just marine ply, some of these screwed down into it, and then we've decorated it with some grass, which it's unfinished, it's not attached yet, but that one.
And it looks really good.
Yeah. So it looks great, but it is very simple to do. So if you've got a jigsaw, you can certainly cut the marine ply, and if you can find the right branches, then that's very simple. The other thing you can add to it is the sisal rope, again from Bunnings, and just wrap it around a little bit. I found that Lexi doesn't care about the rope, she just likes to scratch on the timber, but it looks nice. So even if you have a small enclosure, just add little things like that, a couple of shells and something for them to scratch on, and they'll be pretty happy. So when it comes to decorating your enclosure, I'm sure that many of you will know that there are a lot of toxic plants to stay away from. This is some of them. Cats are really delicate in terms of eating plants, so watch out for pretty much anything, and the best thing to do would be to Google the name of a plant that you're thinking of including in the enclosure, and just write, say, panda plant toxic to cats into Google, and it will tell you whether it is or it isn't. But there's a huge range. The main one is the lily. So even when it comes to people buying you flowers inside the house, keep lilies away there.
And diffusers. Diffusers as well.
Diffusers?
The oil diffusers can really affect them too if you put a certain oil in it. So I would definitely Google what, because it can make them really sick. So be very careful with what you put in there, and inside your house as well. But the best thing to do is to just type in the name toxic to plants, Google, and it'll tell you whether it is or it isn't. Cats are a bit funny like that. If they're an outdoor cat where they've got access to all the plants, they can be wandering around past toxic plants and not nibble on them. But as soon as you put them in an enclosure, they will nibble on them. So there are plenty of little bite marks on all of our plants in there for that reason, and probably because we haven't got any cat grass in there at the moment, so she's reverting to nibbling on all the other things. I'll just try and talk a little bit more about a couple of other options. So we've got the netting, the fence systems, and then the other thing you can do is the freestanding enclosures, but the other thing you can do is just kind of comes back to what I said earlier about how I had a dog crate and that worked. So there are plenty of options if you just think, can I turn this into an enclosure? So you can literally get some timbers from Bunnings, you can attach some of these to it and split it out in the backyard. It doesn't have to look pretty, but it will be an enclosure. You can go and get a couple of sheets of the steel mesh, and see, even just that little box in the back corner there, all that is one post into the ground with some steel mesh. So it's very easy to do. You can kind of use your imagination and just think, where can I have a cat enclosure in my yard? That veggie patch again, I could have turned that into one quite simply because it's already got the steel there. I could just drape some netting over the whole thing, peg it into the ground all the way around the outside. It wouldn't be the prettiest enclosure, but it would be better than a cat just being locked inside the house all day. And even if you just take the cat out there for a couple of hours a day and plonk them in there, then that would work. So don't worry too much about having the bee's knees, especially if you're just thinking, I just want one for a couple of hours a day, then just think about what you could turn an enclosure, what you could make an enclosure out of.
There's tons of ideas online just from people's own
Yeah.
You know, I'm so proud of what they've created basically, and they just
Yeah.
online tons of photos for inspiration, because until you've actually looked at it, especially if you haven't done it before,
Yeah.
it's quite mind-boggling what's out there.
Yeah. There are a couple of places online where you can get some really good ideas for DIY cat enclosures as well. So there's a Facebook group called Bunnings Cat Hacks.
Yeah.
So
Alrighty.
have a look at that. And it is literally just people buying things from Bunnings and turning them into cat enclosures. So, and asking ideas about how to turn this, how to turn this. It's a good resource for people that just want that DIY approach, and they don't want to go to the steel place or the intimidating hardware store. They just want to go to Bunnings and get something and turn it into a cat enclosure. So, yeah, have a look at that. Catnets, the website as well, has some great resources on there for how to use the wire system. So they've got some instructional videos on there. So have a look at that. And you can reach out to me at any time as well. I'm more than happy to give my insight into how to do certain things and give my opinions. Yeah, so that's it really. So I'd invite any questions, and as Lizette said, I'll be here for, you've still got an hour before the next people turn up, so no rush, have a walk around and ask questions and anything. Well, yeah.
With the netting, when you put it up, do cats tend to have a go at trying to climb and that sort of thing until they get used to it?
Yeah, so Lexi will climb our netting on the side there.
Just because?
Yeah, just because she can. Usually when they get that few minutes of the day where they go zooming around, she'll sprint up and down there and she'll climb the netting and just go crazy for a bit. Yeah, but it's strong enough. I mean, it's nylon netting which they use in like batting cages, all that. So it's so strong that they're never going to be able to get out of it. Like it's incredible. So when you're doing the netting, if you do use it, the idea is to make it as tight as practically possible, but not so tight that it's really like as tight as you can pull it. And what happens is they'll try and climb on it, and it pulls, and they don't like that feeling. They like to be climbing around on things that have a bit of strength to them. So as soon as it starts to pull, they won't like it. Yeah, but they can climb it. It's no drama.
What spacing do you put on the C-clips?
So the C-clips, basically, if you can imagine a cat's head. Yeah. So on here we go around about every 4, but the idea is that less is not more. About 4 squares. Yeah. But really, it's the more the better, because you do the pull test. So here, they're all good. Yeah, slight space there, but again, a cat's head won't fit through it. Just go along. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest space there. So you might just add another one there. And I mean, you get 1,000, I think, or maybe 500 in a bag, and they're quite inexpensive. So if you're going with that option, just the more the better.
Are there any particular tips you can advise, say, for rental properties? Because the whole issue of the landlord, I suppose every landlord's different, as we know. Some would not like holes in the fencing, all that sort of stuff, or in the masonry. So
there are options. The most popular option for renters is just to get the freestanding enclosure. But if you do want to get something down the side of the house, then
we've got ground level waste, because you don't have to touch to anything, it's just sitting on the ground.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you can, at the moment we're developing a clip, a colour bond clip, so it's going to go
over the... Yes.
Not over the top, but it's going to go up inside so that it doesn't interfere with the neighbour's side at all. And the idea is that it's basically like a really strong clip that holds the netting up underneath there. So at the moment we're drawing up the plans for that, to try and get that, because it's one of the spots in the market where there isn't something. So people use bulldog clips for it, which work, but they rust after time because they're not meant for outside. So we're looking at making something for that. Another option is to just make, so your freestanding enclosure you make for the space. So you can use either the steel or the timber, and you make something in that space. So as you can see, like with that, the timber post on the right, it's just sitting in the ground there. It's not actually screwed into the fence. So you can do things like that where you just make something inside the fence and inside the wall, and you just make a freestanding enclosure that's really close to the house.
Has the same effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The other thing I've thought about, but I don't really know about, is using some sort of poly pipe together sort of system, which is probably what those catnet people do.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how to do that myself, you know, the ins and outs of using all that. But I thought, again, that you could do sort of very close to her, but how sturdy you would need to be and all that sort of stuff. But that's sort of, if I was a bit more DIY minded myself, that's probably what I'd be sort of looking into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there are people, and even if you look on that Bunnings Cat Hacks Facebook page, there are people that make it from polypipe. And it's basically just like that. The one that was on here with that one. Sorry, it's very hard to see now, but I'm not sure if they've used polypipe or if it's aluminium, but it's the same idea where you can use polypipe to make the actual framing. And when it comes to joining it, you go to the hardware store or to the plumbing supplier's place, and they'll just tell you exactly what glue you need in all the joins. You just pop it together. Yep. Very simple. In terms of putting the netting on, I would just say, imagine this is your pipe. I'll just roll it around inside it and clip it on together like that, just with the C-clips. Very simple.
So I probably would not be sort of, I'd be avoiding glue. I'd be trying to find joiners, plastic joiners that you could actually pull apart and put it together that way. So.
Well, the other thing you can do instead of glue, so you can join them, and then to stop them from coming apart is to put a screw straight through the corner piece and into the pipe. And that way when it comes to taking it apart, you can just unscrew the screw and it'll come out. That will give you that peace of mind. But an even more simple way is to just use some duct tape.
Whatever.
Yeah, like this is part of what I want to stress is that there are options. It doesn't have to be the professional standard. You can just use your imagination to try and start anything and see what works and what doesn't work.
I've even thought of trying to, because we went to move from place to place because of work, enclosing a small tree. I know my cat would think that was absolute cat heaven to actually have the opportunity to climb a proper tree rather than, you turn his nose up at your, right there in the corner, and it just makes a lot of difference to let them sort of be really touching nature and that sort of stuff. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
No worries, cheers. Yeah, it really would. One of my ideas for this one was to have another tunnel that goes down behind these trees, but kind of like raised up, so it's actually inside the bushes because she just love that. So it's trying to think like a cat, think about what they want, and it is all that sort of stuff. It's up high, it's in trees, it's in nature. So the more that you can incorporate that, the better. You can certainly enclose a tree, like for this Japanese maple. We could technically put a big steel post in above the tree and net over the top of it, and she'd love that.
I was even thinking, the way you see in orchards, people put the poly pipe curves around a particular fruit tree and then just net it. And you also again think, cat under, think it from the cat safety point of view. But even, just something like that. If you can be stuffed having to cart your cat, and then you could do sort of like little mesh tunnels to it, sort of thing. To me, it all depends. There's what the cat wants. It's also the aesthetics of what you also are prepared to put up with. And the idea of, I don't want the tunnels through the middle of the yard, but if I can get to it some other way, there's a lot of options depending on. You're right. You have to start thinking about the cat and what you're prepared to compromise on. And
that's right.
Little net like tunnels as well that you don't have to have permanently, so you can just put it out there some days
little
but not others.
little mesh versions of what you were doing plastic versions.
But you could pack it up so it's not there all the time if you decided you didn't want that look there.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Yeah, I think you're right. Like, as long as you don't mind the look of it, you can make pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And that's where the netting comes in so great, 'cause it's so versatile. You can span across big areas. It can be over a tree, anywhere.
But you can still
but yeah.
have a nice looking yard for your own sake. You don't have to necessarily compromise what you want out of the yard as well as the cat. So
Yeah.
you
No,
can
that's
both
right.
get something. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You ready to go?
Like I sort of think.
Actually, just quickly before you go, a big thank you
Oh, yes.
for that wonderful
Thank you
presentation,
very much.
Ryan, and pulling together the whole show and tell is just
no worries.
fantastic, and the PowerPoint presentation. So, again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
That's all right.